In this video, we're going to cover variables in Excel VBA. Think of variables as code words that you use to store values in, and then you can refer to those code words later in your code. So we're going to create a new subroutine called variables, and you don't have to, but generally the rule of thumb is you declare your variable first. So to declare a variable, it begins with the keyword dim for dimension, and that's just the required syntax, and then you give your variable a name. Now variables cannot contain spaces, so I'm going to call this variable ID, and then after that I'm going to use the keyword as, and you can see I get a list of options. That as means I'm assigning it a data type. Now I'm going to use mixed text and numbers because this is going to be a student ID number stored in this variable. So I'm going to use the data type string, and after that I can hit Control Space and start typing my variable, and it appears in that little help menu. So to assign it a value, I simply state my variable name equals and then give it a value I want to store inside of it. So like I said, I'm going to store a student ID number. And with this student ID number, I want to do two things. I want to add a new sheet, input that variable value in a cell on this new sheet, and then rename that sheet the variable value as well. So I'm going to refer to worksheets. I'm going to use the add method, and I want this to come after any pre-existing sheets. So I'm going to use the keyword after, refer to my worksheets collection, and for the index I want to get the count of all the worksheets that are currently out there so that it comes after that count. So I'm going to refer to my worksheets collection again and then count. So once this sheet gets added, it will be the active sheet, so we can now refer to it as the active sheet. And with that active sheet in range A1, I just want to give it a header. So we'll just input something like student ID, and in the cell below it, in cell A2, I want to insert our variable, the student ID number. So also with this active sheet, once we've done that, I want to change the name of it to our variable value as well. So I'll F8 through this. You can see right now when I hover over this variable, it has a value of nothing. It's just two double quotes. I know that's hard to see, but when I execute this line of code, it now holds our variable value, the student ID number. So now I'll execute this line of code. This adds a sheet after sheet 1. Then we put a header in cell A1. Then we put our variable in cell A2. And then we rename our sheet the variable value as well. And there it is. So now if I want to add a second student ID number, all I need to do is change my variable value here, and everything down here will automatically pick that up. So now I can hit play again to run all this code at once, and the new student will be added, and there it is. So in our next example, we're going to have a variable that contains a number, so it's going to be a data type long instead of a string data type. So in this scenario, we have a data set of loan records here to the left, and to the right I have an input area where I input new records. And what we want to do is create code so that each time I input a new record here and run my subroutine, it's going to dynamically find the first blank row below our data set and add those values down there. So we're going to hit Alt F11 to go into the VBA editor window. I'm going to insert a new module, and we'll call this subroutine add next record. So we're going to begin by declaring our variable with the keyword dim, and I'm going to call this variable last row because it's going to represent the last row in our data set, and really it's the first blank row below the end of our data set, but we'll call it last row. It's going to be as the data type long because it is a number variable, and we're going to set this variable equal to cells, which is a range that allows number inputs for your row and column indexes. It begins with the row index, and what we're going to do here is something different. This will be something that allows us to dynamically find the last row in our data set always. So we're going to refer to rows and then count for our row input. Our column input is going to be column 1, which is column A, because we know there's always going to be data somewhere in column A. From here, what we're going to do is end XL up and then get the row number and add 1 to that. So let me show you what this is the equivalent of when I do it manually on our spreadsheet. The cells reference here, this row input counts every single row on our spreadsheet all the way down to the very bottom in column A because we're in column 1. When we end XL up, it's like hitting Control up arrow on your keyboard, which takes us to the last row in our data set that has values. So from there, what we do is get the row number of that row that it's on and add 1 to it to get the first blank row below it. So now that we have that, what we're going to do is copy the data that we input in these cells here. So we're going to refer to a range reference of F3 through H3, and we want to use the copy method. We want to paste that to our last row, but it needs to be a range reference. So what we're going to do here is begin with the range. We know our beginning column is column A, so I'm going to list column A, and then I'm going to use an AND symbol to join that to our last row variable, because that should get us at this point in time row 18. So that's a range reference of A18. I need to use another AND symbol to join it to a colon, because you have a colon between your range reference when you have multiple cells as a range reference. So we're going to use another AND symbol, join that to C for the column reference for the end of our range, and then another AND symbol to join that to our last row variable again. We're going to paste special, and I'm going to expand this so we can see what's going on here. And we want to paste values and number formats. So we essentially have a range reference of A18 and C18. So I'm going to input some data here to add a new record, and then we'll run our subroutine. So The next sequence is loan number 10016. We'll use 12/22/2021 for the origination date, and I'll just enter an amount here. And now we'll F8 through this. So you can see the last row is currently set to 0. When I execute this line, it is now row 18. You can see this data in this range gets copied here, and now we're going to paste it to row 18, and there it is. If I run this code again, it's going to dynamically find the next blank row. So if I run this again, you can see there it is. So in our final example, I want to show you how you can store a cell value in a variable. So what we have here is a region of formulas here, and they're all linked to this location drop-down menu where I can select different branch locations, and the formulas here will adjust based on whichever branch is selected to show monthly, year-to-date sales revenue by branch location. What we want to do is store this cell in a variable here for the branch location, because we want to make a copy of this sheet to a new workbook and then save it to a path on our network where the file name is equal to whatever branch is selected in this cell here. So this cell value is going to be our file name variable. So we'll hit Alt F11 to go into the VBA editor window. Anywhere in this project window, I'm going to right click, go to Insert, and then Module. We'll call this subroutine cell variable, and begin by declaring our variable, which we'll call FileName, and that is going to be as the data type string because it's text in that cell. We're going to have a second variable called path, which just represents the path we want to save this to. That's also going to be as the data type string. So our file name variable is going to be equal to worksheets, and then we're just going to reference the sheet we're on now, which is sales by branch. And our cell is cell F2, so we'll refer to the range and then F2. Our path variable is just going to be the string path we want to save this to, which is this folder location here. So I'm going to copy that path and enclose it in double quotes. I'm also going to add a slash on the end of that because we're eventually going to join the path to the file name. So now what we want to do is reference our worksheet again, and then we're going to copy it. I'm going to use the copy method, and if we don't specify a destination, what this is going to do is copy it to a brand new workbook, which is what we want in this case. So what we need to do at this point is copy and paste over the cells of this new workbook that gets created, because they will be all formulas currently, and we want to change this area here to values when we save this file. So at this point, this will be the active workbook, this new workbook. So what we can do is refer to the active sheet and with all the cells on that sheet we want to copy. So we're going to refer to the cells on this active sheet again, and this time we're going to paste special and then Excel values. So now we are ready to save this workbook. So this is still the active workbook, so we can refer to active workbook. We're going to save as, and you can see the first and only parameter we really need here is that first one, file name. So that's going to begin with our path, and then we're going to use the and symbol to join this path variable to our file name variable. And then one final and symbol to join it to our file extension, which we just want an Excel SX standard workbook. So once we're done, we want to refer to this active workbook one more time and close it. So I'll F8 through this to execute each line one line at a time. So we have our file name, which is currently set to nothing. When I execute this line of code, it's now set to branch number 2, because that's the cell F2 on our worksheet that is currently selected. So we're going to copy this to a new file. We're going to paste over as values, and then we're going to save this workbook to our path and file name variables, and then close out this workbook. So now when I go to this path, you can see there is the branch 2 file, which was our variable, file name variable. So now I can change this to branch number 3, and I'll just run all of this code at once now. And back in our path, you can see we have branch 3 as a file as well. Well, that is all for today. Thanks for watching. Please remember to subscribe.